is now seated. All members present. Invocation. Councilmember Thompson, would you do the invocation?
All right, please. At this council meeting, help us to make decisions which keep us faithful to our mission and reflect our values. Give us strength to hold to our purpose, wisdom to guide us, and a keen perception to lead us. And above all, keep us charitable as we deliberate.
Councilmember Wright.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we're going to start today's meeting with a couple of reports and presentations. The first one is from a group called GLASS, Georgians for Local Area School System. Have a couple representatives of the group coming up to speak. Erika Harris and Haley Westcott.
Do you mind if I quickly pass something to y'all to staff?
Thank you, Erika.
Thank you. All right, well, thank you for having us here tonight, Mayor Davis and council members. We appreciate this opportunity to present to you. And most importantly, we want to thank you for supporting our students, our parents, our teachers, and really the entire community through considering different ways in which we can improve education here in Dunwoody and throughout the state. GLASS, and I believe some of this will be repetitive for you guys, but for those who don't know what GLASS is, GLASS stands for Georgians for Local Area School Systems, and we are a group that's come together to help advocate for the passing of HR 46. HR 46 is a House resolution that was written by Tom Taylor, and the purpose of HR 46 is to allow local municipalities formed after 2005 and any cities that have adjoining borders to create their own school system. Why do we need HR 46? A brief constitutional history. In 1945, the Georgia Constitution placed a cap on the number of school districts that were allowed to be formed. And if you look in your blue folder later when you have some bedtime reading time, you'll be able to see an op-ed that I wrote that gives you a little more history into that. But the brief synopsis is that there was a cap on the number of school districts that could be formed, and the only option left was for the consolidation of school districts. This is good for school districts that are extremely small. It allows them to buy together to maximize financial and program efficacy, but it doesn't address the problem of when school districts become so large, they become ineffective on the other side, and they're not able to control their finances as well, and they start to lose program efficacy and being able to meet all of the students' needs. Why are city school-based systems important, and why does it matter? Number one, evidence shows that school systems that are right-sized, meaning they contain a population, a student population between 2,500 and 10,000, maximize academic outcome and financial efficacy. So that's one of the first reasons why city school systems are a benefit. Two, when school districts fall below or go far above these numbers, you'll begin to see a downward trend in both of those areas on average. Again, inside the blue folder later, you can take a look. There's going to be a handout that will show the correlation between graduation rates and FTE spending per pupil. And what you'll see is that right in the middle, the sweet spot where we consider the 2,500 to 10,000 student range, what you'll see is a maximization of financial spending and also graduation rate. And as you move to larger school districts, you see that you not only lose graduation rates, but your efficacy in finances also loses out. Local controls matter. school systems that are extremely large, they struggle with the challenges of building and implementing programs that support all the students' needs. When you are tight and close to your student population, you're much more able to assess the needs of the students and build those programs to support them. It's a little bit like the old AT&T slogan of reach out and touch someone. When you are closer to home, when you have a system that you can easily access your district office, that is a benefit not to the students and parents alone, but also to the teachers. It's a benefit to the schoolhouses because you're able to communicate your needs and you're able to also work to adjust those programs quickly instead of waiting for a larger fallout. At the end of the day, I think the last point I want to make is that local school systems certainly provide a better opportunity to be proactive versus reactive. And what I mean by that is when you're in a large system such as, I'll use DeKalb County as an example since that's where we are.
Erika, speak up. There's people in the back who are saying they can't hear you.
Can you hear me
Yeah,
now?
you gotta get real closer.
Oh, really? Is it on?
Kiss the mic.
Yeah.
You're going to get lighting.
Step off and step back on this pad.
Is that better?
That is
Oh,
better.
Look, now it works.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. No, that's all right. There is a better chance of being proactive instead of reactive. And what happens often in DeKalb is that you don't necessarily see the smaller problems happening within schoolhouses when you have 160 to consider. When you have 10 schoolhouses to consider, it's very difficult to hide more of what we would consider minor problems, but it's those minor problems that grow into major problems in education. And so when you're able to identify those needs, when you're able to quickly make adjustments in the programs and decisions that are going to benefit those students and those teachers and that community, it's a benefit to all.
I'm going to talk about the timeline. As you all know, today was the first day of the Georgia legislative session taking place down at the state capitol. This bill is going to take 2/3 of a vote from the House and the Senate. That's going to be a big task for it to take place, to go through both chambers. It's also going to be a short session, and I know we've all heard Tom Taylor talk about that. It's going to probably end up done in late March. We're going to be planning on working down at the Capitol, talking to the legislators, and the people down there to try to get support for the bill. Assuming it's got successful passage, it will then be put forth to the voters as soon as November 2014, possibly November 2015. And this would be under a referendum. In conjunction with the lobbying down at the Capitol, GLASS is going to also be trying to be working with other cities to build support. Just last week, I spoke to the Sandy Springs Chamber of Commerce with Tom Taylor, their board of directors, to educate them on this bill as well. I think it's important that we all tell the good story of what this bill can do for education. This is a state issue, if improving education. Great school systems bring strong business partners, and more high schools graduates lead to higher paying jobs for those graduates and increase the college attendance across the board. When we increase the quality of our workforce, the employability of our workforce, we bring business to Georgia, and that's all good. We've got great companies such as Kia, Caterpillar, and Toyo Tires that have just called Georgia home, and that's fantastic. We want to keep doing that. How can you all help? Once again, I think it's partially by keeping the conversation going. Whenever you get a chance to talk to another legislator, another council person, another mayor, please bring this up, because it's important that all legislators know about this. We're going to be down there at many hearings, and that would be a great time for you to show up. Erika, when's the school? 28th. Yeah, 28th of January is going to be a great day to come down. We're a grassroots group. Ways you can help is by helping us get funding too. We are basically, we need money for websites, all sorts of stuff. I mean, we're operating right now on a shoestring budget, so we're always kind of trying to generate money. But I think the main thing that we're here today is we really would love your support for this bill. This is a very important bill that will transform not just Dunwoody, but it could transform the whole state, the metropolitan area of Georgia. So it's important for all of us. Thank you.
We do have an email, and the email address is glassadvocacy@gmail.com. And then stapled to the back of your folder is also has our website, and the link on the website. We're currently working on bringing the website up to have a little more information. You'll find my contact information on there if you have more questions. But you'll also have our website. On the website, there's a link to our Facebook page, and the Facebook page has a lot of information about upcoming events. We'll use that for a quick transfer of information if there's going to be a hearing down at the Capitol as well. So you can look there and find out a lot of information.
Before you leave, what kind of notice do you guys get on a hearing? Is it a week notice? 10 hours?
Fantastic question.
Next afternoon? What?
You know, and Paige Olson is here, and she might. Did we lose her? Oh. Paige Olson's here. She might be able to speak to that a little bit better. But my understanding is that most of the hearings will be scheduled with some advance notice. There's always the potential of it being an afternoon's notice. Call in the morning, you're going to meet that afternoon at 2. So hopefully we'll have at least a few days notice for each one, but at the same time we need to be prepared for a last minute notice as well.
In addition, Facebook, Twitter, we'll be communicating through those mechanisms as well. So.
And if you're interested and you really love going down to the Capitol, we are happy to add your emails to our distribution list, and then you can receive personal emails from us as well. And I have to tell you that it's so much easier to speak to a class of 35 students than it is 7 adults, and I have no idea why. But I miss my kids.
Any other questions?
Thanks. Anybody?
Question. Thank you so much for the advocacy that you're doing to get this across the goal line for us here in Dunwoody, for the new cities that this would apply to, and quite frankly for the education quality lift that would happen in the state of Georgia. What sense, do you have a sense yet, it's still early, of the kind of funding that you need? Is there a target dollar amount that you need for, say, this year's efforts versus when it's on the referendum issue?
That's a great question. I mean, a few line items that we know are going to hit is we need directors and officers insurance, because we've been pretty securely told that we'll be sued. We love that one. And that's going to run about $1,500. A website, a full website will run about $3,000. And then our marketing materials will also run close to approximately $3,000 as well. So it's we had incorporation fees. Most of the things that we've done so far have come out of our own pockets, which we're happy to do so to a certain point. But we are looking to fundraise for some of those larger ticket items.
Do you have an elevator speech at your website? You know, I'm talking about, you know, that standard 1 to 3 minute talk that if I've got, you know, a legislator from another part of the state, or more likely I've got some friends that have legislators in other parts of the state, what's the message we want to get punched through to those legislators? I need that elevator speech.
At the end of the day, the 1 minute speech, if you really want even a 10-second soundbite bite, is that this is a constitutional issue. This is about balancing out the Constitution that 68 years ago, when they limited the number of school districts, it was not able to anticipate the needs for deconsolidation today. And that is your 10-second soundbite. Is that it's a constitutional issue. It is balancing out the Constitution. It's allowing for deconsolidation to have what other smaller school districts already have.
And local control is better.
And local, and through that, it's local. And look, and again, we can get into the weeds here. It's interesting, local control to rural counties is different from local control in the metropolitan area. And so that's where we talk about balancing it out. So you will have county school systems that are 3,500 students, and they are an entire county spread out. And then you've got Dunwoody, much more compact, yet would contain over 6,000 students. And 6,000 students to us is local control. And so again, it's being able, it's the constitutional amendment of being able to deconsolidate and have the benefit that most, and I stress, most other school systems in Georgia already have.
Erika, what Jim asked you there, is that on your website, that 10-second soundbite?
Again, our website is not up and it's not come to full fruition yet, so that will be on there. We do have a mission and vision statement that you can find on Facebook, and that is in our about.
You can find it on Facebook.
I'll show you.
Mike, our mission and vision statement is in our About section of Facebook when it explains what we are, and through our mission, there is the constitutional amendment, and that's where that is.
I applaud you for what you're doing, because when I was a young kid on the farm, first year we got T. Adley Stevenson, who was running the second time around. I remember him, the first time I saw him up there, he said, I'm going to do something about education. That's 50, 60 years ago, and people are still trying to do something about education, and so we need to do it. I'm glad to see somebody step up to the plate. Thanks.
I just want to end with this. The city of Decatur's graduation rate is at 98%. DeKalb County as a whole, 93, sorry.
I know.
And DeKalb County is at 58.
59. You got to get a little more.
But, so there's definitely room for improvement, and that's what we're trying to do.
Well, and to add to that, if you want to bring it even a little more close to home, Dunwoody High School has a graduation rate of approximately 74%, and then you compare that, and I think that this number might even be a little more important to Dunwoody. You compare that number to Decatur's number of 93.9%, and that's where you see the true benefit, I think, that Dunwoody could gain through a local school system, and that we do have a lot of room to grow.
I wish you all the best. If y'all can get this thing done, it's the most important issue we've got going right now. And again, my thoughts for everyone that it's going to be a fun battle.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next item up is E2, presentation by DeKalb County Sanitation. I believe we have Billy Malone and Gordon Burkett here, right? Billy? And Ashley, can you turn the video back on? Okay.
Appreciate y'all having us here this evening, and
You got to speak right into the microphone,
such
sir.
short notice. I really appreciate
Thank
y'all
you.
having us out here today. I do have Gordon Burkett, the director for Keep Camp Beautiful. Lauren Hamilton's also here, our recycling coordinator. She does a lot of work up here in this Dunwoody area. And I'm so happy to hear about the schools. We've been trying to work with the DeKalb County schools for a long time in recycling. And we've been unsuccessful, but all of a sudden they've got some new leadership over there now. And this new leadership is supporting recycling full force. They're going to do 132 buildings, full recycling, which means not just that's a lot of recycling material out of the schools, but we believe 60 to 80% is all recycled material, but also if they're going to go home, the kid's going to go home and say, Mom, this goes over here. Why don't you recycle? And I think that is really the growth spur. So I'm glad to hear y'all talking about schools. And I'm going to go through this little presentation. It's on our pilot program. Sanitation's been doing this since 1937. We've been in DeKalb County for that long, and we've pretty much been handling the solid waste, and then we've gone to more recycling over that time period as well. One of the things that we do right now, we collect garbage twice a week. I don't have to tell y'all know that. We collect garbage twice a week, and then we've added single stream recycling, and we've added yard debris recycling. yard trimming recycling. We did that in 91 yard trimmings, and in single stream we did in 2005. By taking more and more material out of the waste stream, it's become apparent to us that maybe twice a week garbage is maybe more than we need. It's not that we're here to say one way or another, but we want to look at the industry overall and try to at least get a gauge if people are interested in doing it once a week as opposed to twice a week. What we do now also, y'all know this, a lot of communities don't do all these services, but appliances, furniture, bulky items, we do tires, C&D, unprepared yard trimmings and stuff. Y'all know all these things that we do in DeKalb County. And a lot of communities don't do all that. They may charge you extra, or they say, you got to take it to this drop-off location, stuff like that. We kind of have this philosophy, drag it to the curb, and it disappears by the time you get home that evening. That's what people seem to like. Our Keep DeKalb Beautiful program, it's been modified this year. I've got a new director, Gordon, is coming on. He's really energetic. We're putting litter abatement, the ones that collect litter along the sides of the road. If you don't have clean roads, it's hard to get new businesses. People are really excited about your communities. We are trying to increase recycling services everywhere we can. The electronic collections, education part of it, and the gateway beautification I'll talk to a little bit briefly. Most communities already have some kind of signature when you come into an area, and it kind of identifies where you are. We're trying to do more of that. But let's talk about some of these other things that we do. I've already mentioned some of this, but we basically right now have 51,500 people, or 32% of the population, that recycle at our single stream program. Dunwoody's really high. It's probably over that 40% mark. Most communities across the country kind of stall out when they get to 50%. And why is that? I mean, even the strong communities like Seattle, no matter it doesn't matter if it's free, it just sometimes you stall out. Some people just don't want to recycle, but how do you keep it motivating going? That's one of the things we're trying to do with the school system. We think that motivation through the school system, we can help do it. When I remember when seatbelts came along, I'm a little older, and it was hard for me to learn, but my kids, every time I got in the car, they say, "Daddy, put your seatbelt on." And that's what they're going to do, recycling. And that's how we can really get the motivation going further. Right now, 25,000 tons is recycled. Now, if that's just 32%. So if just doing the math, it can go up drastically from there. And anything we can keep out of the landfill, even though we're the longest permitted landfill in the state of Georgia, we have more airspace than all the private companies or any other county, city government. But that doesn't mean we want to just fill it up. We would rather do something constructive with it. I know y'all was talking about businesses a little bit earlier. Well, when you recycle, you increase in businesses all across the board. That's more services for somebody to process these back into consumer materials. But our purpose for this discussion is we want to try this once a week. Right now, we've put everybody recycling services, yard trimmings, and the single stream on the same day. We pick up that in Dunwoody and all over the county Monday through Thursday. We don't collect on Friday for the recycling anymore. That is your day that you would be on this pilot. And that's where we want to get to, is Monday through Thursday, working 10-hour days, 4 days a week. That way, when there's a holiday on Monday, we just push everything back one day. We've had it in the past where you had a holiday on Wednesday and then you try to push something forward or backwards. It gets real confusing for the customer. Plus, we believe it's going to be more efficient because now we don't have 3 supervisors out there watching the trucks go around. We got one sub-supervisor in an area, and they'll be responsible for that street. When we get that street cleaned up, we'll see you next week. And then that street should be clean. It should be more efficient. Plus, we believe it's going to be better for the consumer because you say, well, what day is it? I don't know if it's yard trimming day, if it's single stream, if it's garbage day. I don't know what day it is. It'll be all on the same day. We think that's more efficient too, and consumer we believe will like it. One of the reasons, and the main reasons, is that we have, this is the last 3 years, we have lost 58,947 hours for lost time, people getting injured. Why is that? We pick up garbage by hand. We pick up repetition, 1,000 homes, picking it up off the street, picking it up, putting it in the hopper, and doing it, stepping on and off the truck. We have back injuries. We have this over $1 million of injuries that we've paid out for the employees. We love our employees. We think we got some of the best employees in the state as far as what they do, and but we don't want them hurt. But all this is repetitious work that if we can put some mechanical arm or a tipper on the back that handles a cart, such as you see right here, like you've seen them all over, then they're not picking it all up by hand. So then it's not so much the heavy lifting and the tiresome repetition. You know how everybody gets that, they type too much and they get that wrist disease or wrist problems and stuff. Well, it's the same thing. Our guys stepping on and off that truck, you can just imagine 1,000 times a day. Back injuries is our biggest leading injury right now. It will pretty much, maybe not eliminate it, but it'll pretty much reduce that just about to nothing, and that's a big thing to us. We want to do a 3-month pilot. Okay, this is not a permanent situation. This is just a trial. Everybody says, well, I don't want to do it. You know, everybody's scared of change. And I said, well, look, we're just going to try it for 3 months, okay? We've selected some streets, the red ones and the brown ones over there on that map. We did this as operational as we could, basically just trying to pick the ones that seemed like we could make good logic of it. And we're going to try it for 3 months. During that 3 months' time, we'll be doing surveys at least once a month with the city council, with people that's in the pilot study, and anybody else that wants to chime in. We want to get all the information, the pros and cons, how we might be able to tweak it a little bit better. We're not forcing anything down anybody's throat. We're used to, this is the way we do it, and we're slow to change. Hey, we're not changing just overnight. But we know it'll work. We've seen it work. Las Vegas, Henderson County just went to it. Dallas just went to it. Polk County just went once a week. All these were traditional twice a week garbage service. And as they increased the recycling more and more, they found out that, you know, because of that, we don't have as much volumes. And people that do recycle, they just say, you know, I've got one bag. I mean, I don't need a whole lot of service. We picked the 65 gallon. It's in the middle of the road. The old containers used to be like 96, 20 fit in people's garage. 65 may be too big for some people too. Over time, you know, we need to get someone that's only a single family at home and need to get a smaller container just for them. We'll try to accommodate that. But we're trying the middle of the road just to get this pilot program just to see. This, you know, get the flavor of the community and see is this acceptable or not. We got, actually we're covering 9 areas. Shamley annexed, they took over the Annex 1, but then they got Annex 2 in place. Now we're picking up Annex 2, so it's actually 9 areas. That's a typo on there. But it is 28,000 homes all over the county. We will be meeting neighborhood associations. Betty Davis with our One DeKalb is setting that up. She's got a good email list and contacts for these neighborhoods. We're going to be going out to the neighborhoods and saying, look, giving this similar type presentation, don't be frightened of it. It's just a program. You know, we don't want to scare anybody. We want to answer the questions. We want as much feedback as possible. We're going to be doing mailers and brochures. On our surveys, we even using a third party to help put the information together so it's non-biased. It's kind of third party. Going to use Kennesaw State. They're known for their survey capability, and we believe they'll be good. We'll have a hotline, website, you know, all the stuff that you need. We are going to try 3 different type trucks. One of them sitting out here. It's a fully automated truck. Fully automated don't work in every neighborhood. It works in Arizona where you've got all brand new streets and they don't have parking. Well, in DeKalb County, we've got older streets, older communities, and there's parking on the side. So fully automation don't always work. Semi-automation, though, is where they just kind of roll it to the side of the truck. It's just putting tippers on it. The Board of Commissioners authorized that we could put it on a third of our trucks. We've got it on a third of our trucks now. And there's two reasons that's important, and I'll get to that in just a minute. We've already talked a little bit about this. We're using industry standards. I've been with SWANA nationally, their Solid Waste Association North America, for 36 years, and been doing this for 36 years. I've only been in DeKalb for 15, but I understand what they do in the industry nationwide, and we know what works, what don't work, and we believe we can make this work, just as we made our recycling program work real well. This is some of the potential savings. Why is savings important? Well, we've been running a deficit in sanitation for about 5 years. Ever since 2008, when it kind of went south, our fuel costs went through the roof. I've got a program to put everything on natural gas that we produce in our own landfill, but it's going to take a long time to get all our trucks converted over. But this is some potential savings. And what this is to sustain our fees. We do not want to raise our fees. We want to leave them the same, and we want to provide the same level of service. We just want to make it a little bit different. Right now we go 4 times a week. If we go in there 3 times a week and we still keep the customers satisfied with 3 times a week service, that will make our fees last much longer. And that's what I think everybody would like to see happen. This is our recycling program. Y'all seen it. Now it's blue bags. Well, what we're going to do if our recycling program's successful, our pilot program's successful, is we're going to start rolling out the same kind of containers for recycling. Now, everybody doesn't need one of these big containers for recycling. But those that, they run out of blue bags, they say, I don't really want to go buy another box of blue bags. But that was because we was picking it up by hand. Well, you got the option, instead of buying 100 bags of blue bags, you can pay $15, you get this container. And basically we're giving you credit for your bin and any leftover bags, which there won't be any, but we'll use the bags on the side of the road for litter, because 95% of everything we pick up on the side of the road is fully recyclable in our program. And the bins will go to the schools. All these schools I've been telling you about, they need them in the classrooms. They need bins in the hallways. They need to be able to have these items out there to get their recycling to the recycled containers, so we can service them. So they're not going to be wasted. It's just that we're going to change them around. But nobody will be forced to change. It's just that the ones that decide they want to change. Some of our beautification projects, I don't know if y'all have known it, but we've put a big effort. We've been mowing and herbiciding the sides of the road for 20 years. It's not normal solid waste service type approach, but that's what we've been doing. And this last year, we got so tired of everybody saying, well, Covington Highway or these state roads, why ain't you cutting? Why ain't you cutting? The state says, well, we don't have any money. We worked with the state, and we worked out a deal. They're paying us not as much as it costs to do it, but $156,000 a year. Now we're mowing sides of the roads on state roads, and we're going to increase that because the public does not see the difference between a state road and a county road. And we just got tired of complaints, so we're going to be the progressive one, and we're going to make a difference. Now we're out there, and we're doing this. This is curb bumping. You know how stuff gets stuck in the curb? It just stays there, and then it just all of a sudden grass is growing in the curb because nobody's cleaned it out. We're doing that, and we're going to do more of that. These are some of the gateway beautification projects. This one, we can't put signs on the interstate, we found out, but we are trying to put, I think it's 7 locations, beautification of some of the areas where it's a little bit wider, the main thoroughfares coming into the county, just to try to spruce things up. We found out over the years that, when people keep the roads cut right up to the road, people don't seem to throw out much there. But when they get to this little area, then the grass is a foot high, that's where everything gets thrown out. And we believe the cleaner the streets are, less likely people are going to throw out. And we're going to have a lot more receptacles for them people so that they can get in and out. We're trying to do an ordinance right now for commercial businesses. I've seen it work in Florida and some other communities where we require a commercial business to put these long reach containers at your entrance and exits to your fast food place. Anybody that sells fast food or drinks, and don't make it where you got to go through the to-go line. Just make it where they can pull in with their nice car. They don't want this bottle in there. They're going to throw it out, and they got a place they can put it and let them take care of it. and that we believe that'll help get a lot of this material off the sides of the road. You got to make it convenient for the people to get rid of this stuff, and that's what we're trying to do. These are some more of the beautification projects, and this is the map that you see up here. Again, it's just a pilot program. If this thing is very successful, which we certainly hope it will be, we'll be able to roll this thing out citywide if it's so desired to. But anyway, that's the presentation, and I'll open it up for discussions. And I've got Gordon and Lauren here also to answer any questions if you have any.
What are your timeline? Excuse me, I'm sorry. What's your timeline for implementing the pilot program?
Okay, Tuesday, tomorrow, we plan to walk onto the agenda. We've done sent it out to bid, 3 bidders, and if they'll approve it tomorrow, by the end of the week, we'll be able to get a notice to proceed out. And they can build these things about 1,000 a day. So within a month, we'll be able to set the date of when we're going to start. We're doing this a little bit around the Martin Luther King, because Martin Luther King was a strong advocate of sanitation workers, the health issues and the working conditions. And but it's probably going to be, I would say, early March. Is that not right, Gordon? About early March is when we anticipate, but we'll let everybody know. Now, people may get their containers a little early, and we'll have information on that and say, don't put it out there yet. We're going to start on this date, but we'll have that information when we start. But I'd say early March.
Is it going to be just straight? Is there going to be a trash bag inside that? Or?
No, but this is what you have to do. Now, recyclables, you don't have to pre-bag recyclables. But garbage, we ask that you put all that in a plastic bag or some kind of bag and tie it. Well, the reason you want this is you don't want it to accumulate insects. You don't want it to accumulate loose trash in the bottom. It sticks to the bottom. It's just hard to get out. And also, you don't want it to litter the sides of the road. When these things flip over, you can just imagine if there's anything loose, it has a tendency just to roll out on the street. Well, you know, that stuff's hard to pick up. So we ask that they put it in plastic bags, or, you know, just try to tie it up in some kind of form or fashion. Don't put anything, don't put banana peels in there loose, because they'll just draw more insects. Put it in some kind of bag just to kind of keep it as cleanly as possible. And then I think it'll work good.
I think you're right. The smell is a factor here.
Yes, sir. Especially in the hot months, it's a very big factor.
You know, one of the things that people have emailed me about is, you know, some of our older citizens like me, you know, these containers get big. I'm not worried about them myself, I'm only kidding. But, you know, these containers get awful big. You said that they will be able to get a smaller container.
Yeah, after the program goes, and we've already talked to our Board of Commissioners about that, after the program gets going and people say, this is just too big for my garage, or this is just too big for me, we should be able to just swap it out with a 32-gallon. We won't be able to roll it out countywide all of it at once, because, you know, these containers, $45 a piece, you know, we have 160,000 just doing the math, quite a big number. But we will be able to adjust our program to them situations. We'll still be doing some of the back door that they're not used to taking it down to the street. We'll still be doing that. So we'll work with the containers, and the pilot will all be the same size. But that doesn't mean that we'll just leave that same size there. We'll adjust it as we go down the road.
And your cost savings, is that an annual cost savings?
Yeah, that's an annual cost savings that I put on that. Yes, sir.
For the recycling, right now we separate, or at least in my house we do. We have the blue box for our paper, cardboard, recyclables, and the blue bags for the plastic, glass, etc. Am I taking from this correctly that we will just have one recycled can and we won't have to separate anymore?
Well, the reason you have to separate is because we manually pick it up.
Okay.
In other words, we have the 18-gallon bin. If it's full of paper, it's pretty heavy. All right, guys, if it's over 25 pounds, it gets starting to get too heavy. That's how the 35 pounds got there. I mean, the 18 gallons got there. The blue bags was for all them loose containers. You can't. The loose containers have a tendency to blow around the street. When we get this in a blue container out, you would just put everything in there. And if there's cardboard too big, you just kind of sit it up under the container so it's not blowing around the street. We'll still pick up larger cardboard. So it's still a single stream. It's just that we had to do it manually. This is more mechanical.
And then a question I had raised was, if you like want to throw away, I don't know, today somebody on my street had an old soccer net that wouldn't have fit in the trash can. Are you still allowed to put stuff outside the trash can or no? And what about just loose, like if you have a party and you fill the trash can, are you allowed extra bags of trash or no?
Yes, ma'am. We don't leave stuff at the curb. We're not a company that's, says if you don't fit in there, save it the next week. We're service oriented. Being a public servant, we've already talked about this. We will ask you not to put it on top of the container. And the reason is that's where the first people like to put it, is because if we're mechanically tipping it, it could fall off and it might break or something. We've asked you to put it right beside it. But yes, all the furniture, appliance, and stuff like that we pick up now, we're still going to be collected. It's just that we're going to try to get everything on that one day, and that way that supervisor goes down there that morning, and we probably can even increase some of our recycling because some of the stuff that's out there, but that evening he goes back through there, that street should be completely clean.
Okay, and one last question, and I'm sure it's just a GIS mapping issue. On some places on this map, you have the participation in the pilot program, except for like where the street dead ends. I would presume that whole neighborhood is going to be participating, or can I not?
This is a Gordon map.
Under the bus,
we're going to pick up the whole street now. It might be a break somewhere. I can see where you're talking about.
Right, you see that.
One little street that ain't highlighted up there in the middle.
Right.
Okay. But I can't imagine that we're not going to give a few more cans out there.
Right.
Yeah, we'll be sure to take care of that.
Yeah, it just seems like it would be inefficient to have somebody even picked up, 4 days, 10 houses or whatever that is. Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Billy, I have a couple of questions.
Yes, sir.
Tell me about handicap access. Right now, let's say I'm handicapped. What kind of service do I get now, and what kind of service would I get in the future?
The same service that we provide now, we do backdoor type
That's
services.
what I was thinking about.
There's a form you fill out. There's no one in the house that's able to break it down to the street and stuff like that. We're going to keep that same level. We're not changing anything except putting it in a container and going to one less day for garbage.
Okay.
Everything else will be the same.
The cost of the service that we're currently paying, is it $240 a year?
$265.
$265, thank you. And that's going really towards sanitation. And I understand the $6 million a year in savings, and I think it's an excellent pilot. My question really comes in the sense of the enterprise fund. The way the program is set, correct me if I'm wrong, but the money that we pay goes towards the sanitation, and that's really walled off. It goes into a separate account for sanitation. I guess I have questions regarding how is this new program, that $6 million worth of savings, how is that going to then transfer over to your beautification in areas outside Dunwoody or other areas that aren't really going to be affected? Are you watering down, it seems to me, the enterprise fund where you're taking that $6 million to now be used for other county services that are not sanitation?
Well, no, sir. I'll try to answer it best I can here. Right now, like I said, for 20 years we've been mowing the sides of the road. This beautification project is that we're talking about is part of that same program. We're just making it more pretty, and we're not. Right now we've been running in the red, but we've had some surpluses and some cost savings initiatives that's helping balance that. We right now, of course, we sell the recyclables, we sell compost, we sell electricity to Georgia Power, we sell natural gas to Gas South, we sell fuel to the Board of Education. We have all these programs that bring extra revenue in. Right now, it costs us basically $400 per household to service a residential home. And by these up. When you say, well, how is that possible? Well, a residential household may produce, like a ton and a half material a year. You say, well, you're charging us $265. Well, smaller households, obviously, they're getting charged the same thing as someone that's got 10 people in the house. Well, the 10 people in the house probably going to have a lot more material than someone that maybe eats out a lot and doesn't have as much. But it's fair across the board. We don't get any monies from the Board of Commissioners, and the Board of Commissioners stays away from taking money back from us. It's to balance our revenue. If we got a little bit extra, we don't pay ourselves bonuses like maybe the private sector. We put it in the same pot, and it may draw a little interest. Not much now, but it'll draw a little interest.
Right.
But in the lean years, we can pull back on it. And we're just trying to sustain that fee.
Yeah, I understand that. I guess I'm just looking at your beautification, your signage, your side of the road, gateway entrances to the county seems to me separate from the sanitation. So let me move off that. I'm more worried also long term, you touched on it, the amount of landfill space that you currently have. When was the last audit that you had on landfill space availability? Because really our funds are going towards maintaining and making sure that the landfill is there long term for us.
Right.
And I believe the DeKalb's been doing a wonderful job on that. Last I heard, like as you said, you're in good shape. But I want to make sure that the money that our citizens are paying are putting into that enterprise fund to make sure that there's space available long term.
Yes, there is. And let me explain. We do it every year, required by law, actually, to do a capacity report. Y'all remember the solid waste management plan? Y'all wasn't a city at that time, but we did a solid waste management plan and explained it to the people, had public hearings and stuff like that. We have to every year say, we have to tell the state we've got 10-year capacity. We did it even for Doraville that don't even use our services because they're in DeKalb County. Right now, our estimated site life is 2,110. Now, we have entertained with the commissioners a few times. They say, well, you want to increase revenue. Well, why don't you just maybe bring some outside waste in, and then that would be just hits the bottom line because it doesn't cost any more to maintain more waste. But so far it's been just here's the border. Let's don't go beyond the border. But right now it's 2110, and again that number has increased drastically since I've been here. When I got here in '98, we only had 15 years site life, and what I did was move a creek and expand the landfill. The citizens approved it, and we got a substantial modification. And because of all our efforts to recycling, we don't even use dirt as cover anymore. We're probably one of the few states, few landfills in the country that does not use dirt for cover. We use compost as cover. What it does is smother odors. We do not get any odor complaints, none. We got houses all around us. Dunwoody comes down there with their school kids all the time, and they're amazed that we're doing so many creative things. But this landfill is going to be here for a long time, and past our kids and your kids. And
I just want to make sure that audit, I haven't seen it personally. You said it was published.
I could certainly send you all a copy of that. We
Thank
do it
you.
every year.
One more question. Kudos on the methane recovery that I know is a savings, and you've gotten some awards for that. So congratulations on that. I'm sure you had something to do with that personally. One final question, if you could. I believe your documentation is talking about a meeting here locally with the citizens of the affected neighborhoods. Can you give us a timeline on when you think that might be, or have you started setting that up yet?
Like I said, Betty Davis is in charge of our one DeKalb. You have some dates. We'll send you the dates. How about that? We'll send all of you the dates so that you'll have the dates of the community meetings, so that you've got them on your calendar.
Thank you.
Word for you.
Billy, thank you for a great presentation. When I moved to Dunwoody back in 1998, my hometown actually had this same system. They used a fully automated truck. It worked extraordinarily well. They went to one-man trucks, and it really created a great career path for the sanitation workers because they were always inside the truck. So I applaud you for removing that. When this first surfaced, I think we were posed with a choice, a survey. I remember being at one of your meetings, I believe. 2 days a week, raising costs 1 day a week, keeping the cost the same. And I asked the question then, so I'll ask again, what's the sustainability of this cost? If you project forward into the future, how long will this keep the cost at the same rate? How long will it sustain the cost at the same rate?
Well, we generally work on 5-year cycles. That's our budget's a 5-year cycle. We believe from the savings on from this program, we'll be able to stretch it out certainly that 5 years. And once we get it fully implemented, we'll have a much better case to see how long. It's just like last time we had a fee increase was January 1st, 2006. We generally every 5 years relook at it. Well, of course, during that 5 years, we had the 2008 people selling us oil that don't have any interest like we got. And it went up through the roof, and it stayed up there. And we was able to hold that. And here it is, 2014, and we still have holding it. We're not a company. Our profit shares is citizens. I mean, that's where we don't have shareholders that that they expect 20% of return every year. Their workers expect bonuses and stuff. So we will sustain that rate as long as possible. But I'm sure a 5-year minimum is an easy number to get to.
Okay. And the green part, I know that you said the blue part would be $15 if a person wanted to move to that. Is this
it will be absorbed by DeKalb County Sanitation.
Okay. And then lastly, piggybacking on John's question about the beautification, the curb sweeping, street sweeping and all like that, is that being paid for through our sanitation fees? And
yes.
Okay, and do you have any of those projects in Dunwoody since we're paying sanitation fees?
Well, we mow the
suggesting?
sides of the roads in Dunwoody. Thank goodness Dunwoody, most of their residents keep their roads pretty clean. But we do mow the sides of the road in Dunwoody. We do illegal dumping ordinance. I mean, we go out and help with if they throw out tires, illegal dumping and stuff. We do litter abatement any of these times it's there. Sanitation does not charge cities for their services, their solid waste services, like we got a dumpster out here in the parking lot. The other government buildings that's under our purview, same thing. It's just we absorb it as an enterprise fund. So we're more of an integrated solid waste system. Now, if it was me, I would have never took over the mowing. But it was given mowing. It was here when I got here, and nobody seemed to want it back because there was a cost and burden into it. So we kind of kept it. But like I said, we've been doing it for 20 years, so I don't see us getting out of the mowing business. The only thing we can do is try to help citizens try to better take care of their property in front of their houses so that we don't have to do it quite so often. But other than that, someone's got to do it, especially the vacant lots and the areas that might be plight if we don't do something about it. And we don't want to have eyesores, some of these intersections and stuff, that might be, you can't see, someone complains, I can't see the stop sign no more. I mean, that's what we do. It's not necessarily a normal practice for solid waste, it's just what we've always done, and I don't see us changing that anytime soon.
Great. Thank you very much. Just as a suggestion, if you take a look at Savoy and Cotillion Drives there at 285, I could use a big cleanup. I know that's state maintained road. Yeah, both Savoy and Cotillion. It's along the edge of 285, and I know it's state maintained, but it's atrocious.
Okay, we'll look at it, and only thing we really have to do is make sure we get permission from the state to work on their roads. We'll look at it.
If you're taking a list, go Peachtree Industrial too. Everything along that Dorville border.
And that is one thing I'll tell you, citizens here in the room, and y'all know if y'all send us a request, we're going to look at it and we're going to try to resolve it if we can. All people.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Well, thank y'all.
Thanks, Bill.
Okay, good job.
All right. We're going to move on to mayor and council comments. Let's start at your end. Doug, anything?
Nothing here.
This was my first real council meeting. The previous meeting was a swearing in only primarily. I'd just like to say again, I'm very glad to be here. Thanks for putting me here. I hope to uphold your trust in me, and I look forward to working with my fellow council members to make Dunwoody a better place. With that said, I will comment that the work session had a very important topic of discussion, which was the chat-com system. I would, there weren't very many people here for that, but I would encourage you all to look into the minutes of that meeting and to the Danny Ross comments, because I think it's an important topic that folks should be familiar with. Thank you.
John?
No, sir.
I was going to recognize some Boy Scouts, but they got attracted by the expensive truck that's outside. They left. But, they went to see the truck. But they are from Troop 494, which is Dunwoody Baptist Church, and I always like to recognize the Boy Scouts and the Girl Scouts because they bring great value to our community. But we cannot compete with the garbage truck. And just to make people aware that the city is aware of obviously the flooding on Cotillion and is working with the state DOT to try to get that under control. The fact that it won't stop raining is not making it easy, but hopefully we'll have a few dry days so that the DOT will get the pipe unclogged. Have a good week, everybody, and Happy New Year.
All right, all I wanted to mention was yesterday the DHA had their annual meeting and were kind enough to ask me to come speak. It's a great group that really was the de facto government of Dunwoody for somewhere around 40 years. And they still do great work, and I encourage you all to become members if you aren't. And now we'll move on to public comment. As always, this is it's not a two-way comment. It's a total of 30 minutes total, and we ask for your name and address. And please be respectful when Sharon tells you your 3 minutes are up. And the first one up is Jason Metzger. Name and address in 3 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Jason Metzger, and my address is 5475 Oxford Chase Way. And I just wanted to say,
Got it bent down. It's tough. I know. There you go. It's better.
Sorry.
Again, my name is Jason Metzger. Thank you for the opportunity. I wanted to thank the mayor, the council, and the city staff for implementing the Complete Streets policy and for incorporating that policy into the paving plan for 2014. As a citizen of Dunwoody, I do appreciate and utilize those facilities when they're added. I commute to the North Springs MARTA, and so I have had the opportunity to use the new bike lane facilities on Mount Vernon, and I can tell you it's a lot more enjoyable on that stretch than further east, where I don't have a shoulder, much less a bike lane. So I do appreciate that and use it, and I support the 2014 paving plan that's on the agenda, especially because it does make provisions for pedestrians and cyclists, and I encourage you to approve that plan. Last night, Bicycling Joe, I think all of you guys know Bicycling Joe, started an online petition, and the gist of it is basically that we support all efforts to continue to make Dunwoody a pedestrian-friendly and bicycling-friendly community, encouraging business and families to move and to stay here. As you guys all know, part of that plan is there's proposed improvements on Chambly Dunwoody and Mount Vernon on the main around that intersection, and that's really going to be a transformational project for the city, for the heart of Dunwoody, if you will. And the petition also recognizes that bike lanes and sidewalks promote wellness and fun, reduce congestion, improve property value, and provide economic benefit. And the petition also cites a study that was recently done, an economic impact study on the Silver Comet Trail. And part of the findings of that study were that property values within half a mile of the trail have increased 7% above and beyond the normal fluctuations in the market, and also that for every dollar spent, there was a 400% return on investment in economic benefits. So these projects really do improve the community and provide economic value. Since 9 o'clock last night, when that petition went up, over 150 citizens have signed on, so it's less than 24 hours. I did bring a copy of the petition and some of the comments I'd like to.
Thank you.
And thank you for your time and efforts in making our city more pedestrian and cycling friendly.
Good, thanks. Next one up is Danny Ross. Name and address and 3 minutes.
He's waving.
Okay. Next one up is Paige Olson. Name and address in 3 minutes. Ms. Olson.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Paige Olson, 1148 Redfield Ridge. You all know that I work with Tom Taylor down at the legislature. I'm a volunteer. I appreciate your unanimous support on the resolution to support the resolution down at State 486 for the independent school system. DeKalb delegation meetings have been set. They're on Mondays, 12 to 1 o'clock. Not this coming Monday, it's Martin Luther King Day, but every other Monday following. It's usually a good meeting to come to. And then other committee hearings are in the afternoon after that. When the Education Committee sets its set schedule, I will communicate with you guys. I believe last year our meetings were on Thursdays, like at 2 o'clock. But once that's confirmed, then I'll give you a good idea of when just the regularly scheduled meetings will be. And we usually know about a few days in advance what the agenda is going to be. As soon as we know if we might be on the agenda at the hearing, we will certainly communicate that as soon as possible. And any day that we're in session, if you'd like to come down and stand on the road and speak with any of the legislators, you're completely welcome to. And I'm usually down there and can meet you at the door and walk you around and make sure that you feel comfortable and at home. So you know how to get in touch with me if you need anything. Questions? Thanks so much.
Thank you, Paige. Next name up is Tony Domici. Name, address, and 3 minutes. Mr. Domici.
My name is Tony Domici, and I live in the main house. And I have something I would like to pass to each one of you guys.
What's a summons? Subpoena. Oh, I'm not going to be pretty.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, today I saw a newspaper by the name Dunwoody Reporter. Inside the newspaper, there was an article. Information was provided by the city of Dunwoody, written by a reporter or an editor by the name Joe Earl. It indicates that there was 1,850 building permits given to the city residents and businesses during 2013. That brings me to ask the question, how many of those permits were justified or some of them are shakedown? I had that issue of overregulation brought to your attention early last spring. I communicated with each one of you and several of the city officials, and we were unable to reach an agreement whereby I requested that the city of Dunwoody do not charge homeowners and business owners unjustified fees for unjustified permits. This thing, I had no satisfactory answer, and I have not received any cooperation. I was very busy for the last few months to take care of my wife's health issues in Stamford, Connecticut. Now I have to go to court, and I'm subpoenaing 11 of you. So I expect you to show up in court on the 16th at 1 o'clock and bring the records I provided to you in these subpoenas. Thank you very much.
All right, next name up is Travis Reed. Name, address, and 3 minutes.
Hello, this is Travis Reed, and I'm 3725 Woodsong, and I have no idea how to follow that.
You're doing great.
But I'm from District 2, and congratulations to you, Councilman Reinicher. But I'm here today to lend my support towards the Complete Streets Transportation Plan, and as a cyclist, specifically bike lanes. To sustain the city, we need to embrace multimodal forms of transportation. Tonight's traffic around Perimeter is what everyone thinks of when they hear Atlanta. And it took me personally 25 minutes to get here, and I would have ridden my bike had it not been raining. But I'm not advocating out of selfish reasons. I support bike lanes because I've lived in cities where it's supported and the quality of life is just incredible. And look, I get it. Nobody likes spandex, especially middle-aged men in spandex. But my support isn't just for guys in tights on bikes. It's for families that want to enjoy a nice Sunday and go to the Village or go to Georgetown safely. It's for somebody that wants to ride their bike to Perimeter Mall because they don't want to look for a parking space for 5 to 10 minutes. Or it's for the woman who bike commutes to Airwatch. I lend my support to Complete Streets because I live in Dunwoody, I love Dunwoody, and I believe initiatives such as these improve the overall quality of life. So thank you very much.
All right, thank you. That is the end of public comment. We will now move on to approval of the meeting agenda. I didn't hear anything earlier. Anybody want to make any changes?
Second.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All against, say nay. Thank you. All right, now we have the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve that?
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All against, say nay. All right, thank you. All right, now we get down to the business. Unfinished business, L1. I think Brent Walker is doing his presentation. And this has to do with the Renaissance 5-acre park and then on the 19-acre property. You're up.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Give me 2 seconds. Let me see if I can just image up on the screen. I only got 3 minutes. I mean, yes. All right. That's for the audience at home. We'll get a board meeting test. Okay. So we've done another round of conceptual design for the 5-acre park based on comments that we received from council at the December 9th meeting. Most of you have seen this before, but some of the highlights of this concept design is we try to maximize the field space that is there. We've removed the playground facility, the small pavilions. We've also taken out some of the tree cover at the meadows more. A lot of the trees that you see in this concept aren't existing. They would be new trees, so we didn't remove trees out of the plan that actually exists and then we cut down. It's just conceptually how we could plant some more in there. One thing we also did was we added potential trailway amenities, which could be exercise equipment, public art, or some trailway play structures for kids while they were walking on the trail. Nothing like a large playground, just smaller. Along the way, kind of stopovers, some structures, little stumps and climbers and things like that along the trailway, kind of layover locations along the trail. We've also done some preliminary budget analysis on this park for the initial site work, utilities, parking in the trailway. Our estimate of probable cost right now is around $1.1 million. We currently have $1,025,000 current budget.
And let me just add to the record, based on some experience we've had in the past with numbers, these are non-engineered, non-designed numbers. So please take them with a grain of salt. It's the best estimate we can do at this point, but without going into the formal design process and getting more specific, these are guesstimates.
So that number gets us our parking, our site work, all our utility work done. Play space, there will be fields that will be part of that. Basically, it gives us everything but the amenities of the pavilion bathroom, the basketball courts, the bioswales, and the terrace seating. So it gets you your initial setup in phase one. Phase two, which would be in 2015, would be your
Let me do this, if I could just kind of further explain from a historical standpoint. Within the budget for fiscal year 14, out of the new revenue that comes in off of host and the general fund revenue, we put $1,025,000 into the budget with the idea that this project will be phased. That is one alternative. There are ways of funding the entirety of the project at one time, if that's the council's desire to do so. The two options that you have for that, one is to determine whether there's excess host beyond what we budgeted for. We've had that each year, so that's a possibility. We'll not know those numbers until you get into the August time range, and then those funds become physically available in a 4-month payment over the fall into December and January. And then the other option is that the city does have unreserved host funds that be able to add to this. They're outside of the sort of year-to-year funding, but taken out of reserves. Those are reserves that are not calculated toward the 4-month reserve. There are funds that we were withholding in the first 2 years of host funding before lawsuits were completed between DeKalb County and the state. We started collecting our money in full. So if the council so chooses to try to fund it in one project and not phase it, there are some advantages to that, obviously, for the public, of having the amenities created on the front end as opposed to waiting until 2015. But from a fiscal standpoint, if y'all want to put it over 2 years, so basically it would be 1.1 in the first year, and then about $900,000 to finish the project with the amenities. So overall, it's about $2 million full build out for the entirety of the 5 acres.
With that,
Could you go through again what it gets you, that 1.1 million, and what it doesn't?
Sure.
That we can see here.
Basically, we prepare the site for all the grading, all the utility work. It would also get us the trail, the 2 play fields, and all the parking. Pretty much would not get you the terrace seating and everything in the center. The bathroom facility, bioswales, and the basketball courts would not be included in that.
Gets the landscaping?
We could do planning as part of that initial phase one. We probably would hold off on some of it just because with the bioswale, with that in the future, we would have to do that later.
And as a follow-up question, is it possible, and by the way, I thank you for staff, I'm not sure who it was, but staff, for going back to the community survey that we had with the Parks Master Plan and trying to match up to unmet needs that we talked about in the last meeting. So we've got on the east side, the right side of the picture, kind of an odd-shaped field, and then we've got on the west side or the left side of the photo, an open meadow. Are either of those spaces able to be some type of a regulation size field that, and I'm not sure what size, is that what that is?
So that's a mid-size youth field, so U10, U12 soccer, and youth lacrosse. Both use a roughly 40-yard by 60-yard plot. So that fits both vertically and horizontally. Let me show that real fast. Both vertically and horizontally on the large field. And then the open meadow was actually designed to hold that same size field. So it overlays between the parking lot and the existing trees as well. So you basically get two full-size fields, one on the west side in the meadow, one on the east side in the multi-purpose sports field, and that still leaves you room for additional smaller child fields or warm-up areas or multi-purpose play spaces.
Yeah, I actually have a handout of that too. We took the liberty of just showing some smaller U6, U7 soccer fields on there. So if you wanted little kicker programs or practice, I think you could do that also. So I have that.
And Eric, while you're on that, because this is a touchy subject for me, I know we're way short on fields. Is there any way, you grab a pointer here, it seems like we put this right in the middle and made a smaller field here and a smaller field here. Is there any way we can put this here and have a bigger field here, or this here and have a bigger field here that could get regulation soccer? In other words, I kind of look at this as we take the basketball courts and bump them right in the middle of a 5-acre park, and then we go, well, we don't have enough room to put a regulation field in there.
Yeah,
have you measured that out?
We have. The problem is to actually put a regulation soccer field that's a 200 by 400 foot field all the way across, almost uses up the entire site, and the only way to get the width for that is to also intrude on the parking areas. So not only would you move all the middle spaces out, but you'd also have to move all the parking and reduce your parking count. But just for the size and the geometry of the site that we have, getting one full-size regulation soccer field is really, really difficult unless that's the only thing you want to do with the site. So our approach has been to try to divide it up into two more usable size play areas for sort of small to mid-size youth fields.
All right, I understand that there's a need there, but there's also the need for regulation soccer fields as well. I mean, we're in Dunwoody, we're up to at B0. So that's an unmet need, and I was hoping to get one in here. If it's not going to work, it's not going to work. But again, I implore council that we have got huge unmet needs, and as the opportunities arrive, and they're going to get harder and harder, we've got to look at that. And I think we're going to be looking at that and working on as we keep all the master plan moving forward.
So, on the funding spectrum and the priorities, mine would be basketball courts before almost anything else. And I'm wondering if there's a different way to sequence this so that basketball courts can be in phase 1. Maybe one, I don't know, but I'm just throwing that out. That I think that while there is an there is an unmet need for field space for organized play, we are surrounded by organizations that offer some opportunities for organized play, and basketball courts are totally unmet in the city of Dunwoody, and nobody gets on a bus to go play basketball at the nearest courts in Chamblee most of the time. And so my priority would be to find a way to fund the basketball courts in phase 1. And then also with not funding the biosphere in phase 1, what impact does that, or biosphere would be a big boondoggle. Bioswell in phase 1, what impact does that have on water and runoff and stuff? Because it seems to me that it's there for not just beauty, it's there for water issues.
Right, and we would look at that through the construction design process, but one part about phase 1 is it's all landscaping and grass and pervious surface. There's no hardscape in phase 1. So we would have to take that into calculation with our hydrology study but we would in phase 2 when we built it. I think with that matchup.
If I could, for the council's benefit, I think when we initially put this together, the initial concept plans that the community had worked with us on in 2012, before we got to this sort of design, was a more elaborate amenity on the site, and we were looking at a higher cost. So I think part of it was we could not fit all of our costs on a cash basis, and now, you know, we're still, you know, $1 million short of full funding for the project, which is a lot of money. However, I think what may make sense based on the fact that the two things that are major that will be left off are the pavilions and the basketball courts, which are important amenities. And really, except for the fields, the only two real amenities on the plan. It may be worth consideration of the council, either at this juncture or a future juncture, to go ahead and look at amending the funding for the budget and go ahead and just doing this in one phase as opposed to two. There's some efficiencies also with doing all the construction at one time as opposed to sort of laying out the groundwork and then coming back with the amenities in the future fiscal year, just based on how the plan has sort of evolved over the past 4 months in discussions between the meetings we had at the St. Patrick's and meetings we've had with council. So I think that's the discussion. I think trying to fit that in to phase 1 within the $1,025,000 is just going to be an impossibility because the site work and the stuff that's the non-pretty is just that's where the bulk of your costs are going to be.
Sorry, if I can just add one piece to that. One of the challenge of breaking out piece by piece the pieces in the middle is they've somewhat been designed as one package, because if you have the basketball courts, you somewhat need the restroom facility and the pavilion. And the bioswale feature, actually part of its purpose for being there is all of the water from the hard courts and the plaza drains into the bioswale to handle our water quality. So while it could be broken out into different pieces, we would likely incur some unintended consequences and some additional costs to handle those other issues by breaking it apart.
One other kind of question about the fields is, and I think it's a council question and it doesn't have to be decided tonight, is do we envision casual play or organized play on these imaginary fields on the landscaping? Because when we've had, you know, there are residents, there's going to be new homes right there, and then there are hundreds of residents at the end of the street. And I think that if we change this from what I think the perception has been, which is sort of an active play park, but without the organized activities, to something with organized activities, I think that in some ways demands a public meeting, so that these neighbors who rightly or wrongly feel fairly put upon will have some opportunity to give input. If we're changing the overall use of the park, and I'm not saying we should or shouldn't, I'm just saying that the community has a right to have some awareness of this happening. I've gotten a bunch of phone calls in the last few weeks because we've leased that building to be the surgery center, and they all were under the assumption it was going to be City Hall. And I had, whether or not people pay attention or not, they're still curious. And I've had to explain what it is and what's happening because they were expecting its next incarnation to be City Hall. And so I just think we need to be conscious of the fact that there are hundreds of residents who this is their home.
And to quickly answer the question, the intent is for it to be unorganized, casual play for two reasons. One is we think we'll get more use in some ways by folks in the community to be able to use the field space for pickup games and other activities. And then also, it's a whole other animal when you talk about organized recreation. And the city's likely not going to be the provider of that. It would be a partner or association. And then the requirements they're going to have are most likely going to be for exclusivity on the fields, because if they're going to be putting capital and maintenance into it, they want to protect it with fences. So it's a whole other animal. So our intent is to leave these as big open spaces for folks to be able to play on if they want to bring cones and their own goals. Right.
First of all, I just want to let you know when the hospital moves out, I'm going to put our queue in for I won't be around, but the city council to get the surgical room, because that'll be the cleanest place there. So just put that down on your list. First of all, I just want to thank you. I think this is overall a real good plan. I'm glad my computer just ran out of time again. I like the simplicity of it. I like over on the open meadow there. I like, people will throw a blanket out and have a picnic or whatever, and maybe some play. I like Doug's idea, if we got up to, did you say up to 1,200? Is that what you said?
These are tiny. Well, let's be serious. These are real tiny.
Those are U6 and 7.
Yeah.
The fields he was showing.
Mine are
much larger.
Eric's would be preferred.
That's a U10, U12, 40 by 60 yard.
Okay. We put all the courts, over at St. Jude, and some of them want regulation, but everybody plays well. I understand what you're looking at, Doug. But I think I like the idea of how you cleaned it up. I also like the idea, of the split court there so that you can, and I didn't know what pickleball is, but some of the citizens have now educated me on pickleball. I still don't know how to play it, but that's okay. The last thing I think I just want to say is instead of calling that a bioswale, I want to call that the Lynn-Deutsch waterway.
Does not count. Does not count.
How about the geyser in Philly Mill?
You shut it down. And it's cold.
Well, my only input is I'd like to see us get this whole thing done immediately and not break it into two pieces and it's talking about it any further. I think this is going to work as well as anything I've seen.
I think we got those on.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll go ahead and proceed to construction documents, and then once we're through with that and ready for bid, we'll bring it back for y'all for discussion as to whether or not you want to fund it in one phase or two phases. Is that
Yeah.
It's fine.
consensus? All right, we will move on. Thank you. Thank you, Council. Thank you, Mayor.
All right, let's move on to new business. Discussion of the name and charter amendments to the Sustainability Commission with Rebecca Kiefer.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. I am before you tonight on behalf of the Sustainability Commission with their request to amend the resolution establishing the Sustainability Commission. And in that, they are requesting a change of their name as well as a change to the mission. As you know, in the past couple of months, we have heard that the city of Dunwoody received ARC Gold Green Communities, and that was one of the primary missions of the Sustainability Commission. So the commission has gone through and kind of reorganized and, through some strategic planning, determined kind of a new mission to be set forward. And so through that amended statement, as well as a name change, they felt that the name of committee would better reflect their role and their purpose through the city's sustainability program. So we have with us tonight Billy Parrish, the chair of the Sustainability Commission, and also Connie Morrell, supporting the Sustainability Commission's unanimous vote to make the changes to the resolution. So I'll be here ready for questions.
Yeah, let me just ask, what does it mean in terms of your charter? You're still basically doing the same thing. You're just now a committee instead of a commission.
Right. So the Sustainability Commission felt that the term commission kind of didn't reflect what the charge of the commission was on behalf of the City Council as far as an outreach and education kind of program, and that committee better reflected that.
I agree with
In terms of the mission, what was the mission and what is it now? What's the change itself?
So the mission before primarily revolved around the achievement of the Green Community certification, where it set out a timeline for those achievements. And now it is, in the resolution, has been changed toward that education and outreach.
I saw that the awards in but I didn't realize that was part of the mission. That was actually part of the mission.
Mm-hmm. In the establishing resolution, there's a mission for the commission, and so that's what's been done.
So you mission accomplished.
Right.
So what's the new mission?
It's on here.
I want to hear a little Yeah,
To
a little more color. Color commentary.
to assist the city through, the establishment or the recommendation of different policies and procedures, as well as education and outreach programs to the community.
I think I just want to add congratulations to them because, I went down and I was at the Bronx. Was that the first one?
That was.
And there was a city there that got it the same day we did. We'd been in business for a little over a year and a half or so. And they've been in business for 45 years. So it just shows you the objectives that we've done. And we haven't just paperworked it. We've actually done this stuff. So congratulations. And I know there's some of the members are back there. And Rebecca, you've been a stalwart on this since day one. So thanks.
I think it really started out.
That's right. Kimberly, where you at? You get some credit.
I like the name change because I think it takes and puts more of the emphasis, and I like the new mission because I think that the vision has always been, aside from the award, it's been sort of the community participation and the education part, and to me a committee sounds more welcoming than a commission. A commission sounds like some official government body that's there to sit at a panel like this and and to me a committee sounds more welcoming. Come join us as we work towards these initiatives. And so I support this name change, and it's essentially the charter change because I think it reflects the good work they do already. Thank you.
Mike, I'll add one thing. I got the privilege of sitting through a presentation 2 years ago at the Georgia Municipal Association's annual convention, and the speaker was talking about sustainability, and the room was full of mayors and council members from across the state. And it was a wonderful presentation that day, talking about all the great things that this city had done. And the speaker was Rebecca Kiefer, and the city they were talking about was Dunwoody. And sitting in the back of the room, you don't know pride until you see mayors from all across Georgia scribbling down what we're doing to try to implement in their city. So thank y'all.
Final comment by me. Congratulations, great work. I guess I'm just more concerned the long-term functionality of the committee is also to sort of make sure that the city is promoting sustainable policies and procedures within our own city government to try to make sure that stays on key. And that's in there, right? I just want to verify that that is still a goal that we stay in there.
Right. That's something even working this year. We're going to be bringing you some suggested policies that are more so focused on government only, but also moving forward potential ordinances.
Great, thank you.
Let me just add one last thing after the meeting, after the presentation we had from DeKalb Sanitation, where they said 50% or more is impossible. There's a mission. I think if anybody could do it, we could do it.
Right, we're already, it said about 41% or something on the little map. So.
And it said even the green cities like Seattle, and they can't get over 50, and I think we should go for 51.
That's a good challenge.
Yeah.
That would give us a gold plus.
Yeah. Well, thanks. That's a great idea, great plan.
Great. Thank you.
All right, M2, we'll move on to discussion of the amendments to the no net loss of trees policy with our arborist, Howard Kuntz. No beard this time.
That is correct.
No, sir.
You may want to rip that thing down.
I don't know if this is going to work, but I'll do everything I can. Can you hear me, or should I just shout?
We hear you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council. We'll be back. You're correct. This is a policy amendment to the no net loss of trees policy. To give you a little history, if you weren't present when this policy was initiated, in 2010, I believe it was initiated that any work done by the city of Dunwoody in the city of Dunwoody for construction projects that resulted in the loss of trees, the urban canopy on the project, would be replaced. 2 unit per tree unit, tree for tree, somewhere in the city, not necessarily on the same development site, but any trees that were lost as a function of some construction project would be replaced somewhere. At the time that it was enacted, it was expected that that would apply to discretionary projects, elective projects. So if the city were to construct a civic building like a museum or a library or
Please
something.
notice your phone's battery is low.
Terrible.
Yeah.
We can work that out. It's also true for parkland or any other project that the city develops and starts. What also caught up, or what else was caught up in the project was non-discretionary construction activities. And this conversation started when I talked with Mike Smith, Public Works. Every time that there is some emergency work, some emergency repair work that's done on an easement, the city will almost always have to remove one or more trees so that they can attend to whatever it is that's broken. Generally, these are stormwater lines that are underground and stormwater lines that have been in existence for a number of years, and in those number of years, trees have been either planted or, more often than not, there are volunteers. They just naturally occurring trees that are located on, in, or across these easements. They become an impediment to the swift and efficient repair of broken lines. It's not only the trees that are on the easements for which the city itself is responsible, but third parties as well. You have trees that are growing into overhead utility lines or are growing into gas lines or some of the other public service that is not necessarily maintained by the city but is still present. There's been an issue in maintenance of those lines because the policy requires that the loss of those trees during maintenance activities or construction activities, the loss of that tree requires recompense. Third-party utilities have chosen not to remove the trees that are causing them nuisance on their easement, and instead they just cut them back, hack them down, which is not a sound arboricultural practice, nor is it visually very nice to look at. I'm speaking specifically of the section of road on Dunwoody that's right across the street from the Redfield subdivision that goes all the way up to the Sandy Springs city limits. There were a number of trees that were cut off roughly 8 to 12 feet above grade, just flat, to make sure that those overhead utility lines were allowed to exist without there being any conflict from waving branches in the breeze. It also happened on Womack across from the college, right there where the college comes over to Womack. There were a number of overhead lines that, rather than being removed, which was the prudent act, they were left so that they wouldn't have to be replaced. So we've made some strategic changes, somewhat significant, so that it bears out that some discussion should be had. The changes we've termed rational exemptions, and they're exemptions to work that is not discretionary. We've turned them to be imperative. If something is broken, if something needs to be immediately repaired for the timely and efficient provision of service, then the city needs to go in and replace whatever section of line is damaged. And in the process, trees will need to be removed. They must always need to be removed. This is seen as being punitive. There's sometimes when it's appropriate that the trees be replaced, but it's becoming more and more an issue trying to find the funds to replace the trees. The number of trees as they grow every year. Really what's worse than that, the money can be found through the arborist budget, but it's really the logistics of finding a place in the city of Dunwoody, which, if you haven't noticed, has a very dense urban canopy. And there are some areas in the city which don't have a dense urban canopy, which have a plan for development. The plan for development hasn't been finalized, but it's not prudent to plant a bunch of trees in Brook Run Park when we don't necessarily know what the final form of Brook Run Park will be. Shouldn't plant trees in 2013 or 2014 just to have them to be removed in 2018 when the next project begins. So to that end, you'll notice, and I'm sure you have a copy of the strike through and underline attached in front of you. We've put in some exemptions to the policy. I can go through them with you if you choose. We added a couple of definitions on page 4. Made a differentiation between discretionary and imperative. Some things can't be helped and can't wait. If there is a sinkhole that's developing because an underground stormwater pipe is ruptured, there's no choice but to go in there and fix that. You can have loss of property, you can have loss of life. It needs to be dealt with. The loss of trees as a function of that is unfortunate, but more likely than not, I mean 99 out of 100, there should be no trees in that area in the first place.
So it's not right that necessarily the city has to replace those trees, which statutorily, an easement is supposed to be maintained free of obstruction. And if there's a tree on the easement, that's an obstruction. So we made a couple changes there to the definitions, and then as you go through most of these changes, they don't compel the city to replace those trees necessarily. It's become may replace rather than shall replace. The text doesn't mean that we won't replace trees where it's prudent or where it's acceptable to do so, but in some instances it's not prudent and shouldn't be acceptable to do so. So we've changed it from being a mandate to being an allowability. And that basically consists of all of the major changes. There's one other change on there that also exempts third party, duly authorized third parties like Georgia Power, Atlanta Gas Light, AT&T, other third party service providers that are out there that also depend on their easements for the timely and orderly delivery of services are also allowed the discretion when they can replace trees. They're encouraged to do so. However, they are not mandated to do so in that way that they'll better maintain their service lines, which ultimately saves money and man hours for both the city and the provider. So if you have any questions, I'm available for you.
So I respect what you're trying to do, and I want to make sure, and I think you've done a nice job of defining imperative. But in the case where it's not under utility water, say a drainage ditch or whatever stormwater issue arises and it's collapsing, they've just done a ton of work in my neighborhood on these ditches. The trees probably serve multiple purposes. They probably serve some water runoff, keeping some of the water running everywhere. And what is a project like replacing a stormwater pipe? Is that imperative or is that discretionary?
There's not always an answer to that.
Right.
Really, we have to look at those as case by case. But if you're draining a basin through that ditch, through that pipe, and it's causing some type of hazard, be it a sinkhole or even if it's just pushing water somewhere else rather than where it's supposed to be draining, those I believe we treat those as being imperative. They're supposed to function as they're designed.
Even if they're planned in January for that calendar year, you think they're imperative? That's what I'm asking. Maybe Michael Smith can address that.
Imperative doesn't necessarily speak to a time frame or a timetable. There's some things that have to be done, but we understand that you can triage what needs to be done, and some things aren't necessarily first on the priority list.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that they can be ignored. Functionally, something will have to be done about those imperative projects.
Right. So then, given that many of our ditches run through people's yards, how do you protect the homeowner who's the trees that serve their purpose for, or just like I said, they can help with water runoff and stuff?
And that happens. Occasionally, you've got two situations. You've got ditches that run through rights of way that are adjacent to person's yards, and sometimes you have them that run through the yard.
Right. And my neighborhood is through their yard.
Okay. So the ones that go through the yard, you hope that there is an easement for us to be able to go forward and do the repairs that are required. If not, we would have to secure temporary construction easements so that we would be able to go onto private property and do the repair as required.
Right, that's not what I'm worried about. What I'm worried about is the tree replacement policy, because I totally understand not replacing it under a power line.
The work that's done on private property would not be changed by this policy.
Michael, what the answer to this question? Okay.
So I think what you're talking about, you're working on a stormwater project in somebody's yard. In those situations where we have to remove landscaping, in some cases that there's obstructions in an easement that we have that really shouldn't be there, but when it comes to just basic landscaping, we usually work with the homeowner. We're not really going by the no net loss of tree policy. We're working with the homeowner to kind of restore the area that we disturbed with our project.
Right, that's all I'm asking. Thank you.
Just a couple of items here. I'm very interested in the provision for the publicly advertised tree giveaway for city residents on private property as an option for meeting the replanting requirements. When we determine that prudent right-of-way and easement spaces aren't available to the reasonable, I think it's a great program. How do you control, though, then the resident putting the tree in the right-of-way on their property that someday might be a sidewalk, might be some other kind of thing that we then come back in?
We'll probably have to do a little bit of education at the same time. We could probably do the tree giveaway in conjunction with our Arbor Day celebration, which usually what we'll do during that is I usually give a talk to some group at the time, commiserate with the Tree City USA, and we would probably provide instruction to folks to please put them on private property.
Okay, and sometimes people don't always know private versus right of way. So, the curb isn't the measure of the private property, it's something inside. All right, we got to think about that is all I'm saying, because we come in to put in a sidewalk, then we're removing a tree that we just put in. Specific question though, under the exceptions, and let's see what page is this? It's section 4, and it's exception, I think it's A3, because B has been stricken. So the 3 numbered items, I presume, go with A. I'm not following the organization of this.
I actually caught that earlier this evening. That's going to have to be worked out. Right now, you are correct. It would be A3.
Okay. Item number 3 is the one I'm interested in, whether it's A or stricken B. But item number 3, that sort of reads like it talks about trees alive or dead that impact the orderly operation of motor vehicle, bicycle, and pedestrian traffic through Dunwoody may be removed without the need for the revegetation. Some could read that and say, gee, when we put in a multi-purpose trail through Brook Run, then this exception might apply. And I want to be sure that when we go in to do other amenities at Brook Run, that we would actually replant any trees that come down from that. Do you read it that same way?
It wasn't the expectation to talk about off-highway vehicle trails. The clause was put in there. The clause was put in there to differentiate between a utility line, which might be gas, water, power, electricity, or telephone, versus automobile rights-of-way and the adjacent sidewalks. The idea that you can remove obstructions, usually visual obstructions, as they need to be removed is the first clause, and then the second one is to not replace whatever you remove, because you wouldn't be fixing the problem if you put an obstruction directly back where you removed one. If I guess the last thing on here is that it says it may be removed without need for compensatory revegetation, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it'll be the city's policy to not replace the vegetation lost through an act along that motorway or pedestrian way. So everywhere in here, this isn't, the policy hasn't been changed to create the opportunity for us not to replace trees specifically. It does allow that, but that's not the purpose. It's still in the city's best interest to replace the trees that are lost, and wherever prudent we will do so. It just no longer compels the city to do them. It allows that discretion.
Let me answer this question, if we could, just in a different way. Is that the city's going to go forward with Brook Run Trail Phase 2, and that's going to require some removal of existing trees. My understanding is the policy still states that when the city does a capital project, that we would be replacing any trees that we take out on a one-for-one basis.
Yes, because that's an elective project. To put in the trail is not something that is an imperative. It is an elective process.
All right, so we wouldn't look to this pedestrian traffic, for instance.
Now, I think there's a separate clause for capital projects, and under that clause, we're still required to replace one-for-one any trees that we decide to take out as part of a capital project.
Yeah. Well, good. I just want to be sure we're reporting this, so that's my understanding of the intent, that we would replace the trees.
I mean, the main point, and I don't want to take away from anything Howard was saying, is that is really to sort of change out from the dead and dying to the more so to the trees that we take out as a matter of necessity to put in projects. And make sure we replace those one for one. If a tree was already dying, we're not required to put that tree back in somewhere else, but we can, and we will when we can. Thank you.
Terry touched on the replacement policy, and I agree that it needs to be tighter. We should have some control over it. The other issue that I wanted to look at was the easement aspect. Tell me about signs. If there's a tree growing higher than the visibility of a sign, are we make it easier for the sign people to take down trees? No, because they still have to come to us, correct? If it's in our easement, if it's in our right of way, this doesn't come into effect. They still need to come through us to do so, correct?
Correct. And this would also apply to imperative actions as done by the city or the city's authorized third party. So if a private party wanted to come forward and do an elective process, they wouldn't get any exemption from these changes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, this policy applies to us.
Right. Why not? Still our property around it, though.
A couple things, Director of Sustainability, I presume is that Rebecca?
That is currently Rebecca, yes.
Okay. The other thing, Terry touched on this, but priority of who gets the trees. You know, we're talking about the trees. How do we set a priority? You know, we got the trees here, and all 7 of us show up and want a tree. How do you
Arm wrestle.
arm wrestling? Good. Okay.
First come, first serve.
Yeah.
First come, first
My
serve?
expectation would be first come, first serve.
Okay, that's good to me. On 3A1A, that's on page 5. It says here, permits to remove and destroy trees for discretionary construction, blah, 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 blah. A, application must be accompanied by a landscape plan prepared by a registered landscape architect, certified arborist, or a registered forester, showing tree replacement. You know, I just wonder what the cost of that is. Is there something, you know, that somebody could come in here and present us with a plan that they drew up and we'd say, okay, that's good? I'm talking about.
That's what happens now.
Yes.
And in every jurisdiction where I've ever worked, where I've reviewed these, they're almost universally returned to the applicant with a number of comments of why the plan that's come in won't work or isn't necessarily the best policy for the project. We use certified professionals for buildings. We use certified professionals for site design. We use certified professionals for stormwater. We should use certified professionals for the lasting landscape that will be present after everybody has left the job.
Okay, I don't know how everybody else thinks about that, but, you know, most people can kind of take a good look at that without paying for all that, and with a little advice from you or whoever is being the chair that day, say, you know, you ought to put your tree over here. And I think, I don't know, it just seems like an added expense for the citizens that maybe we don't need. Now, let me just try to sum up what you said here. A discretionary project, trees must be replaced somewhere in the city. That's always been the rule. An imperative project, they may be replaced somewhere in the city, but it's not mandatory. Thanks.
Just to kind of clarify something around Denny's question, we're really talking about what the city is holding, the standard the city is holding itself to. So this is not a homeowner has got to go out and hire one of these, you know, hire an arborist, hire a landscape architect. This is us holding ourselves to a standard, is my understanding.
Yeah, for permits for discretionary construction on public property is that number one.
Right. That's
However,
a good point.
There are times when the city partners with private contractors who need to come forward and bring us their plans. In that instance, those plans that are coming forward would have to meet the terms of the...
That would be on city property.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right.
So these are city projects with contractors.
Yeah, and I think Denny, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think your concern was we're going to somehow make a homeowner engage in
Well, if
this.
somebody's going to be out there and doing something within the right of way, which is city property.
Sorry.
And, you know, that, you know, we won't approve that. Is that correct?
Yeah, typically we don't allow folks to make improvements on city right away.
Okay, that takes care of it.
I wasn't sure.
Yeah, Howard, you and I had this conversation a while back, you know, and I appreciate you trying to clean up the language here, because When I was first elected, I learned about the no net loss of trees policy, and I was thinking, okay, so any tree that we take down for a reason, or a tree that dies or is dying that we take down, we have to replace. But we don't get credit for volunteers.
Right.
So doesn't it make sense that over a period of time we end up with what we already consider to be a huge tree canopy over, like where there's no more room for another tree? If you don't get credit for the volunteers, but you have to replace anything that's dead or dying and anything you take out.
It's an untenable proliferation.
You can't possibly get there from here eventually, right?
Any area of land is going to have a carrying capacity, a number of trees that can adequately grow. You put too many of them in there and they all suffer. Yes.
Okay. So we haven't solved that yet.
Nope.
Are we going to try?
We're getting closer.
Okay, we're getting closer. That's what I was hoping for. Is we were actually acknowledging that at some point you run out of space to put trees.
We're nearly there.
You don't get to count volunteers.
I think we're nearly there.
Okay. I would think
That's a great receiving area. I mean, I'm looking at that, salivating at the opportunity for a whole lot of trees in there.
All right. Anybody else? All right. Thanks, Howard. Let's move on to the next item here, which is the comprehensive transportation plan. Brought to us.
I'm going to make this real brief, and then I'm going to move it out since everybody agrees. I look at any plan we have as a living document, something that we should keep up to date, not something that we should sit here and then hire somebody for tens of thousands of dollars, whatever it is, to make the corrections that we're very, very adequately capable of doing ourselves. And I guess reaching the compromise here a little bit, what I want to do here is actually, it's very, very plain. All I want to do is take out the verbiage in the comprehensive transportation plan that makes it a 3-lane road on Mount Vernon to using only 3 lanes where it's necessary for intersection improvements. And with that said, I'd like to just move that to the retreat, and we'll drop it right there unless somebody wants to continue to march on the line with it.
Move it to retreat?
Yeah.
Sure. Retreat. Sure. All right, Michael Smith, you're up with the number 4, which is the last item on new business, 2014 paving plan.
Okay. What I'm hoping for tonight is to get consensus on the 2014 paving plan. Normally, we would bring the current year paving plan plus an update to the 5-year plan to the council, but we just got our most recent road ratings in at the very end of last year. We've reviewed them, and we're going through and doing a thorough review and looking for a final report on that. So I went ahead and included the first 4 years of the 5-year plan, which were part of last year's plan. I didn't add the 5th year yet. I want to get the final results on the road rating. But to stay on schedule and be ready to pave in June, we need to go ahead and start putting things together and getting ready to bid the 2014 list. The list for 2014, and I included the other years as kind of a frame of reference, but the list for 2014 is pretty similar to the original approved 5-year plan last year for 2014. I've added Center Drive, Nandina, and the west end of Dunwoody Village Parkway because based on the new ratings that we've gotten and the proximity of those to what we're already planning to do on Chamblee, Dunwoody, and Mount Vernon. And I added patching on the south end of Chamblee, Dunwoody between Cotillion and Peeler. We recently, council gave approval to move forward with allocating the grant money we've gotten from ARC to go ahead and look at a streetscape bike and pedestrian improvements on that section of Chamblee, Dunwoody. That's a partially federally funded project. We're anticipating that it's going to be several years in the making, and that section of Chamblee, Dunwoody needs some patching to make it try to last until we're ready to do the whole project. The Mount Vernon and Chamblee Dunwoody, the main paving on those two roads, we talked before, those are really impacted by the timing of DeKalb County's water main replacement project. They are getting closer on that. I think they're close to having their final plans. We finally got some feedback on the intergovernmental agreement we're trying to put in place on that. But by the time that agreement gets approved by both parties, it's put out the bid, a contract's awarded, and then they're anticipating that the actual water line replacement itself could take up to 6 months. It's a good possibility that Chamblee, Dunwoody, Mount Vernon won't make the paving season this year. I wanted to go ahead and put it in the budget so that it was there and available, and then so that we can go ahead and contract for that work. But there is a good possibility there that the actual work itself will get pushed into 2015, depending on the timing of the water line replacement and the weather. And that brings me to the complete streets analysis that's in the memo. One of the things that I did to try to make all this fit within the budget is split the recommended funding to add the bike lanes and sidewalk on Chamblee Dunwoody between Valley View and Womack over this year and next year. I would have had to move streets down to include it all in this year, and realizing that all of Chamblee Dunwoody may not be ready to pave until next year, I allocated that funding over 2 years. On the other segments there, the Chamblee Dunwoody, Cambridge to Valley View, that's a funded project already by the city, separate from the paving budget. And then Womack to Roberts, to put bike lanes in there, we'd have to move curb, move sidewalk, and there's also streetscape in the Dunwoody Village Master Plan, so that's a pretty big undertaking and not something that I think we could try to fit into a paving project. So we're recommending there that we go ahead and repave the road. It's in need of paving, and then the rest of that bike and pedestrian and streetscape improvements would be a future capital project. And then for the Mount Vernon segments, we think through most of Mount Vernon we can adjust the lane striping and get the bike lanes in. There's a section between Dunwoody Village Parkway and where the road narrows down to 2 lanes at the end of the village it's about 900 feet that we would have to move curb to be able to fit everything in. So we're recommending sharrows there as a temporary measure until future streetscape is done and those curbs get moved anyway. And then there's a section, the easternmost section that we're recommending for paving, the curb would have to be moved similar to how it was on the section of Mount Vernon in front of Dunwoody Station a couple of years ago. Move the curb and then go ahead and add the sidewalk and the bike lanes there. So I think that covers everything that I had there in the memo. If anybody has any questions?
I do. Michael, so on the Chamblee Dunwoody portion of the Complete Streets policy, is there right-of-way acquisition necessary?
Not on the Cambridge to Valley View. We have not looked in detail yet at the Valley View to Womack. I know there is a section there where the right-of-way is pretty narrow. Preliminarily, we think we can get it in there. There may be some temporary easements needed, but part of what we would do from here, if council gives us direction to move forward with this, is go ahead and do the survey and design and everything that would be needed to do that. And then we'll also be looking in detail at all these streets and getting things together for the bid documents.
So I happen to think that the segment you're talking about from Valley View up to Womack is really narrow, and that's a big concern of mine, and I'm not, certainly not going to support taking people's property if they're not willing participants. I've always said I'm not against bike lanes. I'm cautious about impacting people's homes and established communities where nothing changed for 40 years. And so, but you did say you're going to work on paving that part of Chamblee Dunwoody, or did I misunderstand you?
We have in the list to pave that section, and then in order to add the bike lanes and sidewalks where we have it budgeted over this year and 2015 within the paving budget to provide the funding for the bike lanes in addition to the paving. Now, if there was right-of-way required, that would change the thinking a little bit. That would add costs and probably time, and I think we would come back to you at that point and say, look, we need to defer this or rethink the project.
And in a big picture, because I know I'm going to get the question, you have the paving, the big plan for paving for the next 5 years you've given us, or 4 years?
4 years here. Well, we can come back with 5 at the next meeting or in February.
How do communities figure out where they are? How does neighbors, whatever, figure out where they are if they're not showing up on this list and they see their street is crumbling?
The last report we put the actual ratings on the website.
Okay.
They can go and look at what the rating of their street is. That won't tell them what year, but they can see how bad their street is.
And when will we'll get that report again refreshed,
yes,
correct?
Yes.
Michael, if you could just reiterate for the council and for the public that on the policy of how we handle the paving, we've got a certain percentage that we put toward high volume streets and then certain toward neighborhoods. Can you kind of repeat that?
What we target is about 70% of the money going to the main roads, the ones that people use the most and they're the most expensive to fix, and then the other 30% to the neighborhood streets. That varies from year to year, but that's the target we start with each year.
So I just want to kind of point out that we do get comments and questions when they look at the list of the ratings and say, my street's worse than, say, Mount Vernon, why aren't you doing mine first? And that's really the reason, is trying to hit those main high-impact streets, even if they're, not necessarily worse than a particular neighborhood street that may only serve 5 or 6 homes.
And then the dips that some of us are starting to see on our streets probably indicate a water pipe issue underneath, perhaps, or a water issue where the road seems to be sinking. Is that generally?
Usually those are utility related. They're either where the sewer lines are and the backfill has settled over the years, and that's usually if you see it running down the middle of the road or near the middle of the road. The ones to each side crossing the road, those are usually service lines to people's houses. It doesn't necessarily mean, usually it doesn't mean that there's something wrong with the line. It's usually that the backfill wasn't put in well to begin with, and over time it settles. We have a lot of that.
Michael, I'm fine with the 2014 list and the proposals that you've put in front of us for the most part, as long as the right-of-way issue isn't big. I do have questions, though, regarding the list. We've just done the laser, and you've already, it seems like, put a couple of the streets on the list based on those rankings, yet you haven't given them to us. I guess this is the first time that we're redoing the list. What's the policy when we get those numbers and we see that there's going to be streets that are now much worse than what we have to do in 2 years? Are we planning on rejumbling that list and reordering it? Howard, help me on this, because I can see a lot of bad streets, and I'm just trying to figure out how we're going to do that.
That's a good question, and something I think for the council to discuss. The approach I've taken here is and we've tried to do this from the very first year, is that once we moved the main roads around based on capital projects and a lot of things, but with the neighborhood streets, we've always tried to keep them in the year where they were first put on the list or moved up and never moved down. We've had very few times where we've ever moved a neighborhood street down. And I think just my view of that is that once we say we're going to pave somebody's street, people can rely on that, and we're going to pave it even if things change in the future. But yes, when we get the new ratings published, there are going to be streets that have moved down the list faster, deteriorated faster, and so I think starting with the 5th year that we will add, we will start prioritizing based on the new ratings. But that is between now and that 5th year, we're going to have streets that were on the previous list but maybe not be the worst rated now, and so the choice would be go ahead and stick with what we already have and work the new worst rated streets in as we can, or say we're going to go strictly based on the new ratings. And I welcome any feedback you have on that.
Well, again, we discussed earlier in an email conversation, looking at your strategy on different streets, they're all a little bit different, whether it's mill, patch, overlay. There's about 4 streets that show full depth reclamation. Those are streets that need big work, but yet they're way down on the list. I guess we've determined that it's there, but we just don't want to move it up the list because there's other ones already on the list, like you just said.
Right. To move those up, we would have to move other neighborhood streets down, and again, that's going to be when the new ratings come out. If there's streets that have deteriorated faster than others, there are probably going to be streets on the existing list that are rated higher than the new ones that come out. But the only way to remedy that is to work the new streets in or just redo the whole list.
The other option is also, we are at the beck and call of the DeKalb County Waterworks in the sense of their timing and replacing pipes. We have a plan for, it looks like 2014, but yet there could be segments of the plan which are not going to be implemented, as you said, because of the timing of the waterworks. I would be interested in seeing if there was a way to do the worst first based on the new ratings and whatever else, to have a backfill list to start raising those up for the 2014, if that's possible. Worst first to a certain extent. We spent big money on the laser truck, but yet we're going to be identifying very bad streets that aren't going to be added until 2018. To me, that seems like a waste of the money of doing the laser truck. We should have some strategy to take the worst first when available, when we can't go forward with what we had intended because of a water project that's happening at the same time or not up to speed. I'd love to have a list of worst first to backfill in.
Yes, in previous years when we've had extra money, when bids have come in lower, we've had extra money to spend, we'll go down and move those residential streets up from future years, and we've been able to do that most years. The new dynamic we're working with, as you said, is that a lot of these neighborhood streets also have these water mains that need to be replaced, and I tried not to shuffle the cart too much on those because we gave that full list to DeKalb last year, and my expectation is, hey, this is what we want to do. We want you to work those streets into your plan, and then we want to pave them. And I'm a little concerned that if we start moving those streets around and going to DeKalb saying, well, now we want you to do this one this year, that it may get a little difficult to do that.
I think what I'm hearing, John, what makes sense to me based on Michael's comments is that as we have either a project that drops off the list from one year or we end up with additional funds to spend, the prioritization will be that we don't move a street up on the list if there's another street that is in worse condition. So for example, let's say you had a street that was scheduled for 2017 on the current list. What we would do currently, without this new list that we just got, is as money becomes available, we move it up sooner. So what I'm hearing from everyone is that what we would do in that scenario is keep it at 2017 and take a street that may have been 2018 or 19 was worse and move that up ahead of it, but never move a street that's already scheduled down further. Does that sort of accomplish what you're saying?
I believe that's true. I mean, I just want to make sure that we've spent good money to do the laser analysis, and I want to make sure that we're using that analysis to put our funds where they should be, not because of some list that shouldn't be fluid.
Well, I think what Michael's saying is that is the philosophy. I think the money is well spent on laser trucks, but what we're concerned about is that somebody that's been actively following the website sees their street on 2015, and all of a sudden, we come back to them and say, well, yours just didn't deteriorate fast enough, so now you're 2019.
I understand that as well, and
I think we have to be sort of flexible in how we move the list around, so it's not going to be as rigid as we were able to do with our initial 5-year paving list. Because I think this sort of honors the current residents that have expectations and still keeps us on our worst first for the most part.
I agree with that, but it was just if projects drop off, that means we now have a chunk of money that wasn't planned for, and we can take the worst out of 2018-17 and do those without moving anybody else that we've made promises in 15 and 16. All right, thank you.
What I can do if you want me to come back with the full 5-year plan is also have a list of supplemental streets that would be added if funds are available.
I struggle a bit with whether or not the list shouldn't be shuffled, because if the purpose of doing this was sort of update the status of the streets, it seems to me as some streets have gotten much worse. I'm not going to name a street, but if one street needs, full replacement and we can logistically afford it, maybe it's more critical to do that street than one that we can just patch and pave. I'm just throwing that out. I realize that I don't think people have, I know that there's probably a few people that have memorized this list, but I don't think people, for the neighborhood streets, I think the anxiety in the city is actually mostly about the busy streets.
They know their own street.
Well,
they know it.
But I'm not.
Move that one.
I worry that in what we're doing by not reshuffling and having not seen the data, and so therefore I don't know, that there are streets that aren't even on this 4-year plan that are in terrible shape, that have gotten much worse in the last few years, that aren't even on the plan, and while these others might hobble along for the next year or two, the streets that are already in terrible shape, we might hit a crisis point on it. So again, not having seen the data, I'm at a disadvantage, but it makes me wonder, and obviously not everybody necessarily agrees with me about whether or not it isn't time to look at the order, because while people may know what their street is, the anxiety in the city tends to be about Chamblee, Dunwoody Road, and Mount Vernon, and the major thoroughfares. And so it's just something to think about.
Well, a couple things, just to go back to day one here, when we were writing the RFPs for the initial vendors, we were Don Boykin and I were talking one day, he said, we're going to have a food fight about the streets getting repaired. And he said, yeah, you're right. So actually the whole idea of laser truck came from John McDonough, city manager over in Sandy Springs, because I talked to him, and the laser truck has really provided us with a basis of repairing our city streets here. And it's a common sense basis. I think one of the things, John, your program is well thought, but then just remember, if we move up streets from way down wherever, what we've been doing, if the street got kicked back a year, we put it back a year, and then we moved that streets up from that year, 1 year up. So in other words, it took the funding, if you get what I mean. Because if we try to, say Chamblee Dunwoody doesn't get paid, we try to put that in with everything from 2015, we're not going to have the funds to do that. I would recommend that we take like any extra funds that we have and then move those up. You know, like maybe we get a windfall from the host funds or whatever. We could move them up, just like we did some of the streets over in your neighborhood, Doug, last fall. And that would be a great use of it. I would also recommend, though, that in 2018, we use the new readings, because, you know, there are no expectations out there. So, but the laser truck's a great way to go, and I think that's the whole idea, is coming out, and you got a right point. I mean, you know, if we're gonna do it, let's use it. 2018, nobody knows who's on the list for 2018, so they're gonna be picked from the worst first, right?
Yes, we're definitely going to use the new ratings for the 2018 list.
I would also have one recommendation on the paving in Shanley Dunwoody down at the end down there on the south end, is that if we're going to do major patching there, that we do it like we did on what's the main street here, runs between Ashford Dunwoody and Shanley Dunwoody.
Ashford Center Parkway.
Ashford Center Parkway, where we do a very professional job of paving, and not just with our small paving crews.
No, we would do it as part of the big paving contract.
Okay, thank you. Good job.
Just a little feedback. I'm fine with the 2014 recommendations on the paving plan, and I'm just kind of weighing in. I agree that we need to keep the list that we've got so far because we represented citizens. This is where we are going to pave your street, and again, I got neighbors tracking it. So if you moved it down a year, I think we'd get a lot of negative comments from that. But I also agree that we need to start using the new list for any supplemental streets, anything that falls off, any excess host funds, any under budget stuff that comes in, and we've got somehow extra funds to do paving. You know, we need to start using the new list going forward. But that's it.
Two things. One, just an observation. We're spending about $2 million a year for repaving. 30% of that is going into the neighborhoods, and we've got a lot of mature neighborhoods that are 25, 35, 45 years old, even some of them, well beyond sort of the useful life of the road without repaving. So we started the game behind the curve because what we were left with the DeKalb, and it is what it is, and we've got to work to chip away at that. But you take your 30% times the $2 million, and that's about $600 grand a year that really gets back in the neighborhoods where it's in front of people's streets, where they see their neighborhood streets are crumbling and gatoring, and there's clay coming up through the cracks during a good rainstorm, so you're losing your road bed. Just to sort of put this in perspective, we've got 2 partial bike lane projects that equal or exceed those annual amounts that are either in 2014 or maybe it's 2014 and 2015. I'm just, I'm again, like Lynn, I'm all for bike lanes, but I've also got to recognize that we've got to maintain what we've got first before we should start to think about building new. And that's a building new versus are we really doing, what's right for the city from a priority standpoint when what we've got existing is in such bad shape in so many cases, as the laser trucks show. That's just a comment I think we all need to think about a little bit. On a more specific note, if we don't get to Shanley, Dunwoody, and Mount Vernon, good Lord, you've got a spot patch Mount Vernon directly in front of the BP to the north.
You think?
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I want you to drive that road at the speed limit in front of BP, eastbound, and curb lane.
Yeah, if it ends up getting pushed to 2015,
use your car.
We should be able to work that in.
Hopefully, DeKalb does their thing, and we get, we do the major repaving we're planning to do. But if they don't, you need to spot repave that in my estimation. Sorry, I told you.
Picking up on the conversation about the streets, as a suggestion, when we move a street up, 2 suggestions. As we move the street up from a prior year, because, for instance, Fountain Blue and I remember Chalet Court just comes to mind, was originally a 2015 street. Because I remember looking that up for somebody that had asked. And then we moved it up to last year with the extra money. But when I go to 2015, somewhere in here, these are streets that must have been moved up into 2015 to take the place of the ones that we did last year that were also in 2015. So it might behoove us when we take a street like from 2015 and move it up to 2014 because we have extra money, maybe we don't replace it in the plan, maybe we call it to be determined, and that gives us a placeholder then the following year to say, you know, we've got some streets that are really from the laser truck, and I believe in the laser truck, that need to be filled in. Maybe that's how we fill that in, because once we fill in something on a future year, it's hard to change it.
And Terry, that's what I was trying to get at. You probably explained it a lot better than I did, but you know, we don't move any streets up that are currently on the list. We don't pay them any later, but if we do have any available space, anything that gets moved up, any extra money, any of those funds, any savings.
With the new laser truck, that is what we're going to do.
Okay.
Is not automatically shift everything back up, because now we have an expectation that somebody in 2017 is all of a sudden the 2015 when they should have stayed in 2017.
And then secondly, I think for me what would be helpful is if these streets had their original date. So if for instance, ABC Street was originally 2017, but now it's in 2015, that might be helpful information. I'm not sure you could ever adjust it back, but it would give us color about this street that's 2015 actually started out to be much later, and we moved it up. If that's easily done, the last thing I want to do is create a bunch of work, but if we knew when these streets were originally on the list, that might be helpful.
I'll see what we can do.
Just as food for thought. All right, so let me get to some questions then. On the list where we have costs associated with it, and we've started seeing with other construction costs, sort of an increase in cost to the request for proposals. Particularly we saw it with the dog park construction, those kinds of things. So we've got a placeholder budget of estimated cost. Have we factored in that we may have an increase in the cost of repaving, so that are these good numbers? Do they reflect some of this increase that the economy appears to be turning around a little bit?
Asphalt prices can be volatile, but we budget in about a 5% increase each year, and so far that's worked pretty well for us. So the unit prices that we use to come up with these estimates assume a 5% increase from last year.
You got 9% contingency in there as well?
Yes. And to just quickly, because I had just out of interest, I printed out the original 5-year paving plan list, and just a quick synopsis of this year. Chamblee, Dunwoody, and Mount Vernon are past due. We've kind of kicked those down the road from the original paving list because of the water line replacement and other things. All the neighborhood streets except for Verdun and Bordeaux, they were in the original 2014 paving list. All the other residential streets here were not in the original 5-year plan, but have moved into this year because of getting things done quicker. So, in a nutshell, Chamblee, Dunwoody, and Mount Vernon are later than they were in the original plan and everything else, but those two neighborhood streets is earlier than we anticipated.
And then lastly is just a comment of my hope, and if my colleagues would agree, we certainly don't have to vote on this whenever this is voted on, but Chamblee, Dunwoody, and Mount Vernon specifically, that when we allocate this money towards that, if the water line replacement project runs a little later, meaning it's pushed into 15, it'll be real easy to say, well, let's just take the Mount Vernon and Chamblee Dunwoody money and use it on other streets. And then that delays what we do in 2015 for Mount Vernon and Chamblee Dunwoody. I hope that we'll retain that funding in the capital budget for that segment. And if the water line replacement then is done in early 15, well, we've already set it aside and we don't have to go through this process yet again. So later this year, when we hear that, well, DeKalb County may not be finished, may start a little bit later, I hope we'll keep that funding there so that you have the resources you need to go ahead and put that out for bid and get it done whenever it's ready to be done, and that we don't rob Peter to pay Paul.
Gary, that's exactly what I said, but you said it a lot better than me.
And I'll just echo it, but throw this out. Our paving's going to be real light this year. If Mount Vernon and Chamblee Dunwoody do not get done, the citizens are going to go, I really didn't see any in town. And so we've just got to, and again, be ready for that too. And I'm with you. I agree, but there's not going to be a lot of paving trucks in Dunwoody this summer.
Is there a way we can, I hesitate to use the word, loan the county money to get this water thing done, or, well, it's not loan, it's not the right word.
There's parks money.
Right.
How about you?
It's not money, it's managed, it's just timing.
Well, yeah, we've been waiting on the design to be complete, and then
The design of the water pipes, is that what you're saying?
yes.
Okay.
And the other thing that we were waiting on for a while, we originally talked about doing an intergovernmental agreement that would have let us get to construction faster by us bidding out the water and the paving, and them paying us for the water.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it still will be faster, but it didn't turn out to be fast to get an intergovernmental agreement. So.
Okay, thank you.
I just have one last question, Mike. What is the laser truck cost?
It was 49,000.
49.
Yeah.
There's a lot more than the first one.
Yeah. 49. That's okay.
And they drove every road in the city and rated it.
Good. That's not as expensive as I thought it was. Okay. All right, let's move on. Everybody done? Okay. Thanks, Mike. Let's move on to public comment. We have one card. Tony Galvici.
No, not finished. No, I have other business or initiation of tax amendments.
Oh, you have something you want to do?
I do.
No one ever does.
I know. All right, so it's probably really other business because I'm not ready to initiate a text amendment. But I'd like the staff to research this long neck trash can ordinance for fast food restaurants that they mentioned that DeKalb County is considering. I think that given that we have a lot of fast food restaurants right in the interstate, and our interstates are kind of trashed, it's not a bad idea.
We'll take care of it.
And then also, I'm curious, the gentleman from DeKalb Sanitation mentioned that they mow, which I'm not sure any of us have ever seen. But
yeah, I can tell you, I've already got that written down on notes. I keep trying to send a note to Michael because I haven't,
I got a note from Michael.
Let's just clear that up right now. Does DeKalb Sanitation mow 1 inch of road in Dunwoody?
No, I got a note from Michael. We mow our own roads.
Well, I think that he's really talking about the right-of-way in people's front of homes. I have a feeling that's in commercial space.
And I'll follow up on that. I don't know that they've mowed 1 inch of the front of anybody's yard that I'm aware of.
No, I'm not. I'm saying that I don't think.
We'll follow up with DeKalb in the morning and get a more detailed answer.
Right. I have a feeling the need isn't here, given my extensive travels in DeKalb County. But it brings me back to something I've asked about over the couple of years, which is the right-of-way on the highway ramps, which generally look pretty terrible. And if we're going to put all this effort into beautification of our gateways and then have people coming off the interstates that really look sorely neglected, perhaps it's time for us to consider a memorandum of understanding and us to take response. I mean, I don't know what it'll cost in it. We have a lot of research to do on it to decide if there's value in it. But it's given that the state isn't maintaining, perhaps it's time for us to consider that an economic development tool because they look pretty crummy a lot of the time. So
I'd be
That's,
happy to look at it.
Can I comment on that, then, please? You know, on Volunteer Day every year,
right.
we clean every one of them, except the ones right out here that PCID pays to clean their own, right in front of them. But we clean every one of them every year, and they've actually got a lot cleaner. First year, we got tires and fenders and everything, but I know what you're talking about.
Right. And then the code issue, the building code issue you and I had discussed the other day on the phone, does that require something from the council now to address the shortcomings? Okay, thank you.
Now I'm done.
All right, anybody else? All right, now we'll move on to P, public comment. We have one card, Tony Domici. You know the rules. 3 minutes, one way.
I did not have a chance to speak my mind previously because of the limited time I was allowed. The issue we have here in dollar figure is $55. During the silly political season, somebody wrote in some kind of a newspaper accusing me of owning fees to the city of Dunwoody. It's $55. It's not the money. If I take any of you guys out to lunch, we spend more than $55. It's the principle. The issue here is over-regulation. You get too many fees, too many permits, and very soon we're going to have a permit to change a light bulb. I dare you, 7 of you, to have a public hearing about regulations and how do the public feel about regulation in the city of Dunwoody. And the fees. I know you get $2 million a year in fees. How much of this is justified and makes sense? You are expanding your horizons and your jurisdictions, and what you are doing, you are using a subcontractor. The way we run the city here, the way I understand it, we have about a dozen of city employees who work for us, aside from the police department. The rest are subcontractors. These people does not, in my opinion, and based on what I know of some of it, does not have the incentive to provide better services. It's for the best interest. They have more inspections, more permit, more legal fees. Otherwise, if we stop getting out of troubles, Lenny will become unemployed. If we start having building inspection, my inspection friends will become unemployed. The issue I'm having here is there are few subcontracted, not all of them, who do not understand public service. And it is your responsibility here to provide leadership. I was not happy to hear John saying something tonight, asking a subcontractor what is the policy is. I expect you to set up the policy. I expect you to provide leadership. Thank you, gentlemen.
All right. No executive session. Doug, any last comment?
Move to adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.